Thank you for watching. This is going to be all about the 1952 top set that's graded. I just wanted to record it, and so I'll have it someday, and also to go through it as there's some interesting things about it, and I hope you'll learn something. This part of the video, we're going to do three parts. The first is going to be the low numbers, and then we're going to do the middle numbers and then high numbers. So we'll start with number one card. A lot of people know about it. It's the number one card on the set. There's 417 cards in the Topps 1952 set. All of them are graded. Most of the cards I have, you'll see, are 7s and 8s from PSA, which means that near mint. I have a couple of lower end cards, and this would be one of them, just for price costs involved. So the number one card is a Pafko. You usually hear it's hard to get in good condition. It's usually much harder to get in a little higher, like a 6 or a 7, but I have it in a 5. But what I like about it is it's very well centered. It's very hard to get the low number Pafkos, the number one, the Pafkos centered. So here's one, and also we're doing 1 through 80, cards 1 through 80. This is number one, and as you know, 1 through 80, they usually have a red or a black back. I just have one of each, one card of each number. I don't have the two different backs, but you can see this is a red back, and we'll go from here. So this is the Pafko. Next is the Runnels. This is a 7. It's actually a pretty high value card. Everyone in the 1952 Topps low numbers, most of the collectors that are more serious, they usually want a 7 in the low numbers. That's become for resale purposes. 6s maybe on a few of the major cards, maybe the Hall of Famers. But once you start getting to 7s, you start getting into the hundreds of dollars, and this card's probably actually in the thousands of dollars because it's the number 2 card. It's also a hard card to find in good condition. But it's also, you can see the centering is also a big part of it, and I really like the centering. As you also see on the PSA, the new labels, the grade number goes underneath the condition, which it says near mint. When they're on the same line, you know it's the old grade. So that's the number 2. Some of these I'll go by pretty quickly. It's just the number 1 and the number 2 card are pretty interesting cards. And as you can see, there's number 3. That's a Hank Thompson. Also, people put these cards on their registry with PSA. Some cards have more weight to them, sort of like when you have a weighted GPA. And I know that the Thompson is a little harder to get, so they put more weight to it. And there's number 4. As you see, this is Don Lennart. Forgive me if my pronunciation's wrong. But this is a 6, so as I said before, usually 6s or less are really not that expensive, and that would be this card. There's number 5. This is sort of cool. Some of the cards are horizontal. He's holding up 7 fingers, so maybe someone can post why. I'm assuming it's like 7 championships for the Giants, so I guess they were winning back then, just like they're winning now, and we're in 2014. So we're in 2014. Also, let's see, if you look at the back, what was interesting about the backs of these cards is they don't actually say the year of the statistics. They just say it says past year, because when Topps made these cards in 1952, the next year they made them, they didn't want people to think they're outdated if they were to sell them the next year. That's why it just says past year, so they wouldn't look outdated. 5. Here's a number 7. Usually the Dodger players and the Yankee players are a little bit more valuable. As you see, there's actually half grade, so it's a 6.5. I'll just bring it back here. Centering again is pretty good. It's a horizontal card. Again, it's a 6. It's a number 8, Fred Marsh. This is the number 9 card. This is actually a really tough card to find in good centering. I just remember this was really hard to get. I had to buy this from a private dealer, and most of my cards I bought were either on eBay or like a Mile High auction or Sirius. This was from a private person. It was very hard to get centered. Here's number 10. Al Rosen. Everyone loves this card for some reason. They love the player, not maybe this specific card, but this is a tough card to get. Even a 6 is actually considered, a lot of the big collectors are still fine with 6s, even though they're several $100s, even as a 6. I think he was the general manager of the Indians as well, Al Rosen. There's Phil Rizzuto. This is a Hall of Famer. People like to buy Hall of Famers. Some people just collect Hall of Famers, and obviously a 7 would make this pretty valuable. This is the number 13 card. Again, I like the centering. Sometimes people will go down a grade from a 7 to a 6, or get a card that's more, it's not as expensive, but as long as they have really good centering. I'm sure I got some cards in here that are not centered well, and I'll point those out. Here's number 14. Again, it's a horizontal card. Some people like horizontal cards. There's a black back, again, and a red back. Everyone seems to think the black backs are harder, but recently it looks like more people I've run into are really looking more for red backs. So I don't know. They'll probably be pretty close. You could go to the PSA website, and it'll tell you a catalog on the population report of how many are red and how many are black. People like Johnny Pesky. I know he's got his own pole, I guess. Not a stripper pole, just a regular pole, and then it would be a foul pole, I guess, in Boston or something. All right. Gene Hermansky, another horizontal. Really hard to get centered, this card, I remember. I don't know if anyone's still watching right now, but if you are, you're probably really into 1952 Topps, so we're getting there. We're almost a quarter there through the low numbers. Here's Jim Hagan. Again, a 7. The 7s on the low numbers that are 1 to 80 are usually pretty popular. Not too hard to sell. Usually the 150 range for the commons. Here's another 7 for number 18. Merrill Combs. The 19 and the number 20 card. Here's number 19. They start to become pretty hard and expensive. Everyone really has a hard time finding this number 19, and they have a hard time finding number 20. So especially a 7's hard for this. A 7's pretty hard, so this is a tough card. You see a lot of 6s for sale, but it's tough to find 7s. You always see 8s at the major auction sites, so you don't see them on eBay. Here's number 7. This is a tough card to get centered. It's horizontal. I bought this from a dealer, not a dealer, actually someone that has a great collection. He's really up there in terms of one of the top collections. I think he has several sets. Here's 21. This guy actually, Fane, is not hard to get. I'm pretty sure if you look up online, you'll see you can get this one well under book price. Here's Dom DiMaggio. Everyone, it's a tough card to get at the time. Again, we're in December of 2014. It seems like the prices keep going up for him. It could be in the thousands. And his brother was, Joe DiMaggio, and Dom DiMaggio was known as the professor, because he wore glasses in the outfield. But he was actually, I didn't realize he was actually a really good hitter. I didn't really know much about him until I started getting involved collecting the set. Here's Billy Goodman. I don't know. People seem to like him. Apparently, he didn't have a real position in the baseball. He was like a utility man, but he played a lot. And he did really well, apparently. Again, it's also a 7. It's hard to get, and a low number. Here's Luke Easter. Again, a 7. I think in real life, I think he died or was murdered. You'd have to look that up. I also noticed not too many players are black in this set. There's 407 cards in the set. I don't remember if there's even 15 black players. We know Jackie Robinson obviously is in the set, but I think he was actually killed about 10, 15 years ago. Here's Johnny Growth. Once you get even higher than 7 on the low numbers, they become even more expensive. Here's Monty Irving. I learned he was a Hall of Famer. It's a 6. Again, I like to get 6s if they're a significant card, like a Hall of Famer. It's actually probably one of the cheapest Hall of Famers to get in the set. It's a Sam Jethro, and it's a low number, number 7. I believe Jethro was good friends with Luke Easter, if I Googled correctly. Here's Jerry Pretty. He's got like 5 bats there. I don't know why he's practicing with his bats on a bench, but he seems to be holding bats. But I think it's just a painting anyway. This is Ted Kluszynski. Not a Hall of Famer, but people really like this guy. I know his cards that are a little higher grade go for a lot more money than most cards that are commons, but I know he hit a lot of home runs, but people really like him. Mel Parnell, for some reason this seemed to be a pretty tough low number card compared as a common compared to others. I don't know why, but this was a tough card to get, I remember. Here's Gus Zernial. It's funny, he's got like the 5, 6 balls on his bat. People like this card. You don't see like, and he's making a little okay sign. I don't know. I think he hit like 6 home runs in a span of a couple days, or I don't know. But this was sort of an interesting card. Eddie Robinson, as you see, the centering gets tough. This is a tough card to get in a 6 or better. It's still not that expensive, but it's hard to get. Here's Warren Spahn. We're at card 33. We're almost halfway there. He's a Hall of Famer, a low number, and I was happy to get a 7 on this, and helped on my set. And I actually bought it raw. Someone had sold me a few cards, and I got it graded. Elmer Vallo, I don't know much about him, but he's actually a pretty cheap card to get, even in a low number, even in a 7. Really wasn't very hard. Hank Sauer, as you see, his centering isn't great, but I know he's a little tough to get. And sometimes you save a little money, you get a 6.5 if you're happy with it and you like it. Saves you a little money. I know it got a little pricey, not that pricey, but a little pricey going for the next level. We got a couple Dodgers coming up. Gil Hodges is very well known Dodger player, and I like the horizontal, and looks like he's holding a bat there. Here's a Hall of Famer, Duke Snider. This is actually a really tough card to get centered. I mean, this is an 8, which would make this a pretty high value card, and you can see that even the centering's pretty tough. It's not even great on this card, but it's a good card. It's a Hall of Famer. It's in $1,000. It's over $1,000. Here's Wally Westlake. Again, it's a 6. Don't know much about him. I don't think he was that particularly hard to get. Here's Dizzy Trout. This was a tough card to get. I mean, they came up a little bit more at the end last month or so, but especially the centering on this is really good. That's why I can have a 6 with good centering. Here's Bob Wellman. Just going through. Lou Kretlow, 42. Ray Scarborough, not particularly hard. Here's Irv Noren. I went down to 40 on here. I was just misnumbered, I guess, but it's a tough card to get centered. We're back to 44. This was a tough card to get centered as well. Eddie Juiced. Not a 7, but again, it was tough to get a 7. Some of the dealers really wanted too much money for him, so I was fine with a 6.5. Gordon Goldsberry. This has extra weight on the registry, on the PSA registry as well. Like it's a weighted, so this is a tougher card to get according to them. So it's a little bit hard to get. Willie Jones. This is a really hard card to get centered, and this is a little bit not too great centered, but not if you look at all the other ones. Plus 7s are tough to get. I would think 8s are probably a few $1,000s, and this is just a regular common card, but it is still a low number. Here's Joe Page. As you see, it says correct bio because they did make an error version. They put the Johnny Sain biography on the back on some of them, which are much more expensive. But even the regular cards, which have the non-errors, are not cheap when you get to 6 or higher. And that's the buddy, that's his buddy, Johnny Sain. They go together, 48 and 49. And the biography of Sain sometimes had Joe Page on it, and some Joe Pages had Sain on it. I thought the two colors here are sort of interesting. Marv Records. This was a pretty easy card to get. Don Mueller. Again, the horizontal cards are always tough to get centered, so I was happy with this one. Here's a Brooklyn Dodger, a 6. You know, it was not too hard to get. Leo Kelly, as you see, it's a low number and it's an 8. I don't have many 8s unless it's like a major card, like you saw earlier, like a Duke Snyder. This card I got an 8 because this is one of the cheaper cards you can get that in a high grade, low number. They must have printed a lot of them. I don't know, but I could tell you 7s are very cheap, so even the 8 was pretty cheap. Here's Ray Boone. He's got a couple different backgrounds, I'm told, variations. I don't really know much about him, but he's not too expensive, especially in a 6. Glaviano. This is also a pretty cheap card for a low number. These are really easy. This is a really easy card to get if you're looking for one. So it's not that hard to get. Ed Lopat. I like the card because of the centering. He's a Yankee. He's not cheap, but not that expensive. But again, I like the centering on it. Bob Mahoney. This is actually a pretty easy card to get as well. We're at number 59 now, which is Ryan Roberts is a Hall of Famer. I didn't want to spend the extra money on the higher cards, but he's is a Hall of Famer. Sid Hudson. This is also one of those cards that's sort of tough to find in a low number, so that's why I settled for a 6. Here's Tukey Gilbert. It's sort of a fun name. Looks like even on the card they put in quotes Tukey. Again, I don't know too much more about it. Here's Chuck Stobbs. It wasn't cheap, but not that expensive. I settled for the 6.5. It looks like his eyes are almost closed. Don't know how you can hit if your eyes are closed. This guy is a pretty cheap card to get too. He just looks like he's like a professor or something. Like, look how he looks at you. He doesn't really look like a baseball player. He's holding a ball, but here's another horizontal card. Roy Sievers. Almost sounds like, I don't know, Roy Hobbs. Here's another Hall of Famer, 7, Enos Slaughter. Everyone knows, part of the Gas House. Actually, probably not, but he was a popular Cardinal. Alright. Preacher Rowe, Brooklyn Dodgers. They call him Preacher. And he's got I guess they use nicknames a lot because that's in quotes, Preacher. Allie Reynolds, it's an 8, which is, I don't have many in the low numbers. He's a Yankee. I look at him in the low pat as the same type of difficulty. People like him. He's a Yankee. Cliff Chambers. This was a very easy card to get in a high grade. If someone's trying to sell you this card for a lot of money, don't buy it. It's very cheap to get. Virgil Stolkop. I really just bought this card because the centering was terrific on this. Tom Upton. Carl Olson. This is a tough card to get this nicely centered. Only 7 more to go. William Worley. I guess his initials are WW. Not too many WWs in the world, probably. Here's Andy Hansen. Here's another WW. Wes Westrum. This is actually a tougher card to get. It's not the best centering. There's extra weight on the registry. Eddie Stanky from the Cardinals. I think he was a coach too, but I think he was also known as a good player. And this card is 79 out of 80. When they would, in 1952, when they sold the cards, put them in packs, they stopped it at 80, and the last couple numbers are really hard to get in good condition. A 7 was really expensive. This was still several $100s. And this number 80 is a really tough card to get in a 7 or higher. If you can look at the, it's really not centered at all. But this is still a $600-700 card just because it's so hard to get. It's got those 2 colors too. I don't know. I think the Seine was like that also. But you know, must have been a hard card to get. So that's it for 1 to 80. We'll do 2 more videos for the middle numbers and then the high numbers. As you see, I have most of the cards. Well, that's it for now. Thank you.